Welcome, fellow workers, to this video orientation. The intent of this orientation for new members is to be informative and instructive and provide some guidelines. The intent for ongoing members is to be a reminder of what the board is about and what those guidelines are. So the hope is that this will be helpful for you. In the process, we'll be covering quite a few things, and want you to know at any time you can contact us if you want to talk about it or have any questions or even any suggestions. So with that in mind, let's proceed with the slides. As we look at the executive committee, the executive board, what it does, you have to understand that the Constitution provides for this. The slide shows the general work of the convention shall be committed to the executive board. It shall have the power to act for the convention in the interim between sessions, but it shall not contravene action of the convention taken at the regular session. That being understood, the board really is the convention during those off months. And it has certain functions. And this is taken from the bylaws of the executive board. And you should become familiar with those bylaws. The executive board shall organize itself to carry out the work the convention is committed to it, and then has certain special assignments to it: acting for the convention during the interim, dealing with convention loans, looking at and making estimates of the needs of the work supported by the convention, and fixing state objectives for all causes, and provide for current financial support of the work of the convention. As you can see from those assignments, there's a lot involved. The mission of the Utah-Idaho Southern Baptist Convention may be stated as: the mission is to encourage, support, and assist churches by working together to fulfill Christ's Great Commission. Cooperating churches are intent on three things: sharing Christ, starting churches, and strengthening churches. Now, the functions of the board, we already did this one.
Oh.
Scratch that one. Okay, move on. Okay. Important and implicit in all this is to understand this quote: unity is not that everyone agrees with what is being done, but unity comes from a shared belief of why things are being done. When you agree on the why, the possibilities of the what soar. Now, as we look at the nature of the executive board and of the convention, understand that it has a legal nature. First is it's a corporate status. That's a secular aspect, and within that respect, it's created under statutory authority by the state, subject to state law. There are legal benefits that are involved, some of which, most importantly, are a corporate shield, which means that individuals, officers, and trustees and members are shielded from liability. Then there's tax exempt status, being a nonprofit corporation and serving for religious purposes. These are all on the secular side, and it also means that we have to pay attention to what the secular law requires and procedures require. Next slide. There's the ecclesiastical side, and that means the church side. And it's ministry-based, meaning it has a purpose. It has spiritual goals. There are religious activities involved. And there's a matter of obedience. And there are some verses that are cited here in Mark, the familiar question that was asked of Christ about, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar? And he said, render unto Caesar. Peter says, submit to authorities. Paul says, submit to rulers. There is an ecclesiastical nature, but it is not something that contradicts the need and the duty to be obedient to the governing authorities. Now, the legal source of authority includes several different sections or places. And as listed here, the first would be for the government. That's in the form of statutes, laws, and regulations. As a corporation, we must comply with those laws and those regulations. There are governing documents of the convention itself. And the list includes the Articles of Incorporation, which were filed with the state, the Constitution, bylaws, and then the actions, bylaws of the executive committee. And these are the governing actual documents, and then there are the actions of the messengers as well. So these are the legal sources of authority. And each one ought to be something you become familiar with, and copies have been provided for you. Now, understanding documents, governing documents, we need to understand that they have to be permeated with the convention's purpose and biblical foundation. That is, they must be expressive of what that purpose is, what that foundation is. The governing documents should enhance and enable the fulfillment of the mission and should embrace both biblical and legal components. As we look at a variety of areas, we'll see that it's important that we understand each of those. Now, there's a need for consistent application. And that consistency has to be between what you're actually doing and what your governing documents say you can do. In that process, it may be that the governing documents need to be changed, and that's a good thing. And until they're changed, though, and whenever they're changed, they should be followed. There needs to be that consistency. But it also means that they are subject to review. Now, for the executive board, there are some things to consider as statutory powers and authority in particular, and as this slide says, all corporate powers shall be exercised by or under the authority of, and the business and affairs of the corporation shall be administered under the direction of the board. And note that phrase, as fiduciaries. That is, people who are acting in good faith and carrying out the mission and the purposes of the organization. But note this statute says all corporate powers, and that's, again, distinct from all ecclesiastical powers and responsibilities. So as the next slide will show, there's a basic understanding. Each member of the board occupies a position of trust and confidence and has a fiduciary relationship to the state convention, to the churches and their members, and to the board itself. And that fiduciary relationship includes certain duties. And it includes acting in good faith, bona fides, which is the source word for fiduciary. So it means when you're fulfilling your duties, your fiduciary duties, making a reasonable effort to attend all meetings, thoroughly review materials, seek clarification as needed, review the corporate governing documents, and dissent from action if you have any misgivings. The intent is for everyone to be using their own mind and what they bring to the table in terms of experience, background, and knowledge. But the blend of all that is, if you have an opinion or a thought, you should act on that. It includes discussion, but feel free to dissent if you don't agree. Primary duties. There are two classifications of duties that I want us to address here. And the first one is simply a duty of care. And what's required by law and common sense is that the ordinarily prudent person standard is applied. In other words, you don't have to have a particular expertise, but what you do have to do is exercise what a reasonable, prudent person would do. What's that? What would be expected? That calls in turn for reasonable inquiry. If you don't understand an issue, you don't understand a proposal, make an inquiry, make a reasonable inquiry, and then the duty of care requires also use your best judgment. So those provide for you an outline of a duty of care. The next duty is the duty of loyalty, which simply is act in the best interest of the convention. And most of the time that does not present a problem or an issue, that in a given circumstance, you may have to think best, but not just what you as a board member might want, but it's what is in the best interest of the convention. So looking at the attributes, this is the Andrika Corporation or group put this out, some attributes of a great mission board. And as it says, a great ministry has a great board, and a great board displays or shows and records high on these attributes. That is, the board and the staff function as partners, and that relationship is very important. And I think we are seeing that relationship at practice with the board and the staff as we're seeing things today. So they act as partners in a trust relationship. They embrace a clear and a timely purpose and mission. As you understand and value the mission and the purpose of what the convention is about and what the board's about. The next one, insist on great meetings. In other words, each meeting should be meaningful and it should be accomplishing things. It should be reaching out in the name of God. It should be glorifying God. And part of the insistence on this is don't let it become bland. Make sure that you understand this is a meeting to achieve godly purposes. Also, the board is accountable, and you have to act with a sense of accountability. And of course, permeating all of this is the idea to pursue excellence. Do the best you can. Seek the best. Now, a couple of tips. When you're making decisions, focus on the vision. Doing what is according to what is best for the state convention vision. That means understanding the vision, having an awareness of it. And then acting with teamwork, unity, and consensus. These are essential. And as those are practiced, we'll find that the board will work well and you will enjoy the experience much more. The policy making. The board is a policy making body. To make policy, it needs to keep informed. In other words, you need to know what's going on, the background information, and you should not be bashful about asking for that information. In developing a policy, you want to know, well, what is to be done, describe it, and how is it to be done. And note that policies are important and they're essential for risk management, liability issues. But they also should be continually reviewed. They need to be supplemented with new policies or updated as law and circumstances change. But these policy-making aspects are key to a good functioning board. So board members should be diligent in two areas in particular. In attending meetings, make sure you're there. Now, we know that not everybody can make every meeting, but you try to be diligent, you try to do that. That's part of the commitment. Secondly, make sure that you are properly informed as to the various aspects of the decisions to be made. Good example in the state legislature or even in Congress. So many bills are submitted, acted on, voted on, and they've never been read. You don't want to do that. You want to be informed. Know what's involved with the decision. Don't be hesitant to ask for additional information. So understandings that should be involved. Board members and staff members should both understand and support what the board is and what its role is. Both should understand and support the staff role. And both need to understand and support the purpose of the convention and its mission. That working relationship is a key factor. And we've got a good relationship going, but that involves communication as well as understanding. And you should have the freedom to contact the staff, and the staff should have the freedom to contact you. But it's that partnership aspect, again, and it makes it a meaningful and good experience. So quo vadis, Latin phrase, where are you going? Where are we going? So part of what you need to be thinking about as a board is to evaluate and consider and plan for the future. One area, for example, is to look at the organization of the board. How are the bylaws written? What are the functions, the committees? Is the organization of the board such that it will accomplish what needs to be accomplished in the best of possible ways? What will the board look like, and what will convention look like in 5 years? You need to be thinking ahead about that. And what anticipated changes are there? And be anticipating those things. One of the examples clearly is sources of funding. As we see those sources changing, we need to be looking ahead. For instance, how will the convention become self-sustaining? Is that possible? If so, how will that occur? What do we need with the staff? What's needed in the years to come? An area, for example, would be, do we need a staff person for missions or a variety of other areas? If so, how do we provide for that? How does that happen? So these are things that the board will be looking at now. And the point of all this is the board has the responsibility not just to receive information and requests from the staff and act on them, but to initiate efforts, initiate studies, initiate looking into different subjects such as mentioned here, be inquiring and anticipate what needs to be done. That's part of what you're there for. So with these things in mind, the thought is simply that the board has a broad spectrum of activities and functions. The challenge is how to accomplish that in the meetings that occur, and how do you handle all the things that go on in the meantime. And this is frequently being done by committees meeting online or through digital means. There's a variety of ways things can be done, but it means that as a board member, you are a board member all year long and not just at meetings. So with these thoughts in mind, I do want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for taking part. The hope is that this orientation video will prove helpful for you. Feel free to contact us. If you have any need for clarification, you have any ideas, any questions, any topics you'd like to be brought out. With all this in mind, thank you for serving. Thank you for being partners with the staff. Thank you for fulfilling the mission of the convention. And thank you for taking part in this orientation session.